So do you believe that tonight is the beginning of the next for the former president?
Yeah, and I honestly don't think he has a choice. Keep in mind, he made this announcement about tonight's speech before the midterm elections. It was a day or two before, so he sort of backed himself into a corner. He couldn't say, I'm going to make this big announcement and then not make it. There's a chance tonight, Chris, he sort of goes halfway. He announces an exploratory committee. I think that would be perceived as sort of a cop-out. So I don't know what other choice he has but to declare he's running for president tonight.
But just to let people into the typical smoke-filled room that you and I have both been in many times, this is not great timing for him in terms of playing to advantage. This is the first time people in your party are getting a little yappy about him since he became president. They're putting a lot of shine on Governor DeSantis. Again, I think it's an article of convenience. I don't think that people in your party are absolutely sold that DeSantis would beat Trump and be the next president of the United States, but there's some convenience here right now. I mean, you know, the common sense of politics would suggest that Trump wait for a moment of perceived strength, no?
Common sense, conventional wisdom maybe is the better term. But keep in mind, there's something about Trump. He doesn't reschedule. That's just not what he does. When he says, I'm going to be there on Tuesday, he's going to be there on Tuesday because he perceives that other people perceive it to be weakness if he changes. If he come out right after Tuesday and said, you know, let's back up this meeting, it would be perceived by him as being perceived by others as being weak. And that's something he would never do. Trump doesn't look backwards. He looks forward. As soon as he says, I'm having an announcement on Tuesday night, he's going to announce something tonight. There's no question about it. Again, I think there's that chance he cops out and does the exploratory committee. But all the indicators are he doesn't have a choice, Chris. He has to announce it tonight. He's backed himself into a corner. So the question is, what is the tone? I think you did a nice job in the introduction. What is the tone? Is it, I'm the underdog again, people think I don't have a chance? Or is it more division? Is it going to be attacking Ron DeSanctimonious and you know, Glenn Youngkin, who sounds like his name might be Chinese? Be curious to see what the attitude and the tenor is tonight, but he absolutely has to announce tonight or else it would be perceived as a loss.
Are you in? If he runs, will you join his team?
Oh, no, I've been very clear in thinking I think he's the only Republican who could lose. I mean, if the election were tonight against Joe Biden, or pick a Democrat, I think Joe Biden's probably the best the Democrats have going, which is, I think they wish they had something else, but they've got Joe Biden. I think Ron DeSantis beats Joe Biden. I think Tim Scott beats Joe Biden. Mike Pence does. Nikki Haley does. Mike Pompeo does. I think Trump might be the only Republican who could lose. Why is that? Because an election with Donald Trump wouldn't be about anything other than Donald Trump. Joe Biden didn't win in 2020, okay? What happened was that, excuse me, no one voted. He won. I misspoke.
All right.
No one voted,
Mick, you and I are about to go down a very ugly road, brother. I'm glad that you're modifying. Go ahead.
Got me. No one voted for Joe Biden in 2020. They either voted for Donald Trump or against Donald Trump, and Donald Trump lost that election. And that's the same dynamic that I think he faces in 2024. A 2024 election with Donald Trump on the ballot will be about Donald Trump, not about Democrat policies, not about world events, not about inflation, not about. It's about Donald Trump.
I hear you. You know, I don't disagree with the analysis. You also have an interesting counterpoint to your own point, which is one-on-one DeSantis versus Trump. You like DeSantis, but 5-on-1. So, you know, not a jungle primary, obviously, but having a number of names in the mix, you believe that helps Trump. Explain.
Sure. I think Trump gets his 35% regardless. If I run against you and I get 35%, I lose because you get 65. If I run against you and everybody else in the studio and I get 35, I win. And under our winner-take-all series, or at least almost winner-take-all primaries, that means Trump wins. That's how he won in 2016. And if there's 4 or 5 or 6 people running against him in 2024, I think it's the same outcome. And he is the highly favored Republican nominee should he throw his name in the hat tonight. Does
not announce a running mate, though, right? Because he could still bail out of this for a host of reasons. There's so much time.
You know, no one's asked me that yet. It's a fascinating. I have an idea about this. I think he doesn't. I think he sits out Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina and Nevada and says, whoever wins those 4 races, that's my vice president. He does vice president apprentice. I know I'm the only person saying that, but I thought that was a very Trump thing to do. We never know. No, I don't think he announced a vice president tonight. The word I'm hearing out of Mar-a-Lago is that he is heavily, heavily considering a woman on the ticket. And the names you hear are Nikki Haley and Kristi Noem, the governor of Iowa, And Carrie Lake's name was on there until she lost in Arizona. So I'm hearing those rumors out of the Trump camp, but I don't expect a decision on that tonight.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.